Welcome to the second official BRIDGECAST.
Second installment.
Second official BRIDGECAST, whatever you want to call this. Actually, it is called the BRIDGECAST. It's not whatever we call this. Welcome to the second BRIDGECAST. I'm Brandon.
I'm Thomas.
And this is a little podcast that we have started through the University of Waterloo School of Architecture. There's actually a student group we do this through called Bridge. And Bridge, I explained in the last one, is kind of like an open platform for people to, they do projects and they do installments and they do sort of really kind of community-orientated things. And so this was an idea that we pitched to them a few weeks ago and said, hey, we really want to do this. And they said, that's awesome, do it. And so now this is what we know as BRIDGECAST.
All right.
Kind of really quickly, just some boilerplating. Bridge is always looking for writers, editors, and contributors to the website. So if you are a student at the School of Architecture and you're like, hey, I actually really enjoy boots, I don't want to write about boots and I want to share my experiences about boots with other people, then you can totally do that.
Moccasins are welcome too.
Moccasins are welcome too. Dress shoes even too.
Especially for Brandon.
It's true.
This guy.
Okay, well, we will probably just really quickly get on and talk about what we're going to have on the plate for today. We're going to open up with some comments and kind of a bit of an introduction and sort of, we'll call it like a recap from the guys on empathy, and then we're going to move into drones, both foreign and domestic, and then we'll talk about doctor-assisted death, right? The new legislation that just passed?
Exactly. We'll get into that later, though.
Mm-hmm. So, want to talk about on empathy first?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. So we have with us today Kamal and
Oh, sorry, I'm Cooney.
Cooney.
I'm Kamal.
Yep. And they're two kind of like organizers, would you guys say?
We are not the founders, but yeah, we're organizers, sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You guys want to tell us a little bit about what on empathy is?
Yeah, it started, I think, last August, around that time. A few students got together, and they wanted to sort of fill a gap that they recognized in the curriculum of the school. We have it in the sort of cultural history course, a sort of empathetic understanding of how other people think.
Sure.
But that's sort of broad, and I think they wanted to bring it into other disciplines, get other professors talking about what they think of empathy, because it's something unique to our school, and not a lot of other architecture schools actually teach a cultural history course,
Absolutely,
or
yeah.
philosophy courses or anything like that. And it's kind of sad to see some courses go away from our curriculum. So On Empathy tries to reinvigorate and sort of criticize the official curriculum at the school with more sensitive teachings. I guess trying to relate architecture back to basic things like love, strength, and compassion.
Okay.
Because I think it's at the core of architecture.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
we get taught that we're responsible, we have some sort of social responsibility, and we have to uphold that. So it's sort of integral, I think.
So you guys talked about like what on empathy is. Kamal, maybe you could talk about like where it happens and like how that kind of came about.
Yeah, sure. So basically we have, it's kind of like, it operates in three different styles: an orientation, a conversation, and a symposium, I guess, at the end. I'm too far away. Sorry about that. So yeah, most of the conversations and orientations happen at Monogram.
Okay.
They've been kind of wonderful to allow us to come in and use their kind of loft space.
Yep.
They provide tea and coffee, and it's all warm and wonderful.
Nice.
So it's a really great space for actually an intimate conversation, which is kind of part of the platform of On Empathy, to have a space, a platform in which students and professors can discuss these issues,
Yeah.
right? A lot of the time, as we found in our undergrad and in graduate schooling, is that a lot of students talk in kind of isolated groups, and these conversations are really beneficial to your kind of overall education. And we wanted a platform where our entire student body can kind of participate in that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So last week we had Don Mackay come in, talk about his talk entitled Progress Report, where he talked about his new book that he's writing called The Chess Game. He brought in sculptures that he did, photographs that he had taken, his whole portfolio,
Cool.
and just shared it with the group and talked really kind of honestly about his process of working.
Okay.
Yesterday we had William Woodworth, who's an adjunct faculty at our school.
Okay.
Bill talked about atonement in architecture, and it was really beautiful and really an honest and heartfelt talk. Everyone in the room was kind of like touched, it really pulled on your heartstrings. Yeah, it was, and that's the kind of thing that we're interested in, having these kind of really intimate, sentimental moments in which you can reflect upon the work that you're doing and the work that you kind of want to hopefully do.
Sure. It's interesting you touched on something you talked about, like noticing in undergrad and grad that you guys had these like little pockets of people that would just kind of have these conversations. And that's kind of how this one evolved as well too. Because like in the first podcast we were mentioning, like it's really interesting, even architecturally speaking, like the way the school is built, there's like these little corners where people kind of huddle and have like a quiet conversation.
Yeah.
And you can sometimes listen in on them, but you don't want to be like too like creeper and like really look at them while they're talking. And so we thought, like, why not, like, sometimes it's like about politics, sometimes about world news, sometimes it's about like fashion, like it's like whatever people are talking about. But the cool thing is like that other people are actually interested in having those other conversations with people.
No, I mean, that's you kind of nailed it there. And we wanted to, like, it's always great to have all those conversations in a way that you can share them, because some of the ideas that come out of them are, you know, kind of important sometimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other layer that we're actually thinking of adding to on empathy is one that encourages more inquiry and
Okay.
investigation, and so that empathy is not misconstrued as sort of passive or as just something internal,
Okay.
but it's actually a sort of will to action.
Mm-hmm.
So we're thinking of even pitting professors against each other,
That'd be great.
or doing something with students where we can really start to chip away at the surface of this and get more clarity as to what exactly empathy means for
Sure.
architecture. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also appreciate the fact that you guys are not doing this inside the four walls of our school. The fact that people are going out into the town, going into Monogram, going into a space like this, for example, for our podcast. It's just nice to actually just change your scenery so that you can come back to school and think about topics of empathy or discuss something like politics or whatever, and come back to school rejuvenated.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it takes the academics out of it and makes it a personal endeavor that you're going to do. I mean, you come to this space and you talk to you guys for 10 minutes. It's like that's not part of my day every day, and
Yeah,
I think that
exactly.
makes it special and
For sure.
and worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, like, even having the lectures we do have on Thursday, like those are nice, and that's sometimes a bit of a break from studio, and it's a break from like the day-to-day studio academic stuff. But I mean, I think that'd be even better if like they held the lectures in here, kind of like it's a different space. It's changed scenery, and like just even changing your scenery while you're designing is super helpful in kind of coming up with other ideas and stuff. So I mean, I think it's great that you guys do that in Monogram, because that space is very intimate, and the conversations you guys are trying to have, like I can imagine the space really caters to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no.
And no, that's an interesting point. I never really thought about the meaning of being outside of the school. And like I said, we try to be critical of the curriculum at the school. So I think it is good that we get people out and into a safe place where they think they're not like being listened to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's kind of why we did this too, is that like when you're in the school, it's like architecture, like all day. Like how, like you see people, and the first question you ask them is, how's your studio going?
Yeah.
Like architecture is great, and I love the school for being really great at architecture. But the thing I think that, like, as a small critique on the school is that, like, there's not really much else other than architecture. And I mean, like, I think it's great what you guys are doing with On Empathy, and this is kind of why we tried to break apart and do the BRIDGECAST like we do on Wednesdays, and we do the lounge on Fridays, to kind of like break out of the school and actually like still be a part of the community in an architectural sense, but at the same time too, like I was talking with somebody earlier, and they were saying how like they're like, prior to coming into the school, I did a lot of stuff, and I think that's pretty true for a lot of other people.
Yes.
But the moment you get into the school, it's just like you're like, whoa, everything's architecture, and I think that was like, I think they picked everybody to come into the school because they knew everybody was a part of very diverse things. So I almost feel like this is like a back to roots things for a lot of people, is to kind of like break out of the space, do something that you wouldn't normally do, and like, you know, talk about whatever you want to talk about, or like do other things you want to do that aren't specific to architecture, you know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot we can learn from other people,
Yeah.
other artists, other
Mhm.
scientists, and this Saturday we're getting Il Wiseman to come in and speak at Monogram at noon,
Mhm.
and in the future in March we're going to have people of other disciplines, some friends of friends and other
Sure.
friends' husbands and things like this, but just people outside of the school
Mhm.
who can share their perspective and really, give us more perspective on life and on our studies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also think too there's value in getting other perspective on other topics and then having that feedback into your architecture, because like the school is almost like a bit of a closed loop. You're
Yeah.
sitting there, you're just like architecture feeds into architecture, and you can kind of create some stuff like that, but when you break that loop for a second and you kind of like, oh, you ponder on something else that's not architecture and you come back to your project, you're like, wow, I didn't actually think I would have thought about that in that, you know, context, right?
No, I mean, that's one of the biggest critiques on the school is how insular it is. I mean, we don't really get the opportunity to go take electives on main campus.
Yeah.
I mean, the only saving grace really is that we get co-ops every 4 months that takes us
Mhm.
out of this place.
Yeah.
Thanks. So, I mean, to have now this space, Main Street, Monogram, the community kind of opens up a little bit
Mhm.
to us to do whatever we want with it.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, I think it'd be, I know that like, so especially with this is like the early stages of it all, but like kind of our vision for this is that we get the community involved too, and that kind of like there's this cross breeding between architecture students and the community, and that kind of maybe starts to build a stronger, you know, connection with the people here, and kind of cement the school even more here, and then kind of start to open up like conversations with people, because there is a bit of a dichotomy between like, you know, local Cambridge people and the students. Like instantly you're like dress, very like, you know, dress shoes, like tight-fitted pants, and like a tie and a shirt walking towards the school. You're like, oh, it's got to be an architecture student.
Yeah.
And you see somebody else like, oh, you know, it's a local Cambridge person. You know, sometimes a little bit more plainly dressed or like whatever. But like, there's this big dichotomy between people, and I almost feel like there's like a bit of a buffer zone between them that, you know, the community sometimes may or may not accept having people here or whatnot. But I think that instances like this could like break the mold and draw people in from the streets and be like, oh, so, you know, we're architecture students, you're, you know, local members of the community, but like there's common ground we can have that's not architecture that we
Yeah.
can, you know,
Mhm.
start to do that with.
No, for sure, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of up to us because we've got an interesting situation in Cambridge.
Yep.
I think that exacerbates the insulation.
Mhm.
So yeah, we just got to get more exposure. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's up to us. It's up to you guys. It's up to everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're just gonna tear down the glass right here, bring the outdoors in. It's great.
Freeze to death in the process.
Exactly.
But we'll be building community while we freeze to death.
Yes. Anyway, it was nice to have you guys.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
So you said this Saturday is the next on empathy session?
Yeah, Il Wiseman this Saturday, Monogram at noon.
At noon,
Okay.
okay. And what time does that go to, or is it kind of just whenever it finishes?
Probably about an hour or two. Yeah, I
Mhm.
don't see it going longer than that. Yeah,
Okay.
they're pretty short conversations. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, hopefully I know this because I'm going to be editing it later, but this podcast should be up that people can know that to come Saturday to Monogram from about noon till 2 and listen to some on empathy.
Sounds
Alright.
good. Thank you guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. So,
So we're gonna move on to talk about some other hot topics today.
hot topics.
I guess we'll start with drones. Am I right?
Yeah, drones is actually a nice place to start because
We have
there's some comedic value into the one story about the drones that I really kind of laughed when I read the article. So, well, just actually quick, brief intro
Yeah.
brief intro to what we're going to cover. We're going to be covering drones and doctor-assisted death. The drones is going to kind of take a bit of a perspective on like the domestic situation that's happening here in North America, both kind of like civilians using drones and other third parties using drones. And then we might talk a little bit about like foreign politics in the context of drones.
Just a little bit. We might skim the surface.
Just a little bit. I mean, it'll be good to
Tip of the iceberg, really.
Tip of the iceberg on that one. And then we're going to cover doctor-assisted death, because there was some legislation that was recently passed by the Canadian Supreme Court. Am I right?
Yep. And we're also going to talk about what Quebec thinks about that.
Well, yeah, we're going to talk about like how that might affect Canada, how that might affect the provinces, and how that might affect individuals and stuff like that.
And maybe internationally as well.
And maybe internationally too.
Canada's a small country after all, you know.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing we plan on doing too is that as more people show up, if they show up, we can start to ask them questions and kind of get their opinion and take on things, you know.
In fact, everyone just have a seat.
Have a seat.
Make yourself comfortable. We brought couches. We have tables. I know they're kind of dusty, but at least you can put your food down.
Exactly.
Make yourself at home. And in fact, the more people that sit here, the better.
Yeah, because then people can kind of see from the street that we're actually using this space.
Exactamente.
Yep.
Okay, so let's just get into it with the drones then. Let's talk about the Mexican side of things. Yes.
Yeah, I want to talk about the Mexican side of this, because this was actually really entertaining, and we actually have articles this time. I mean, we were researched last time, but I mean today we were going to be pulling some straight facts, because it's good to be educated to talk about the subjects we're talking about.
That's true. So thank you everybody for the criticism. We're going to try to keep it a little bit more smooth now.
Yep.
Okay, so basically, on January 22nd, I believe, there was some methamphetamine inside or attached to a drone, a $1,400 drone. And this drone actually fell down in a parking lot in Tijuana, which is in, for those of you that don't know, it's the city directly adjacent to San Diego. So it's a border town. And supposedly some drug cartel, drug lords essentially, were trying to actually smuggle methamphetamine into the United States. So they're not just using tunnels these days, they're trying to go aerial as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's been a huge issue in, I'll say North America. Can we say North American policy?
Yeah.
It's been a bit of an issue in North American policy, because Mexico sends a lot of drugs through states like Texas and just pretty well all along the border between the United States and Mexico. And they've tried, like everything from tunnels and, trying to smuggle it in like, objects that are disguised as the object, but in fact they're packed full of drugs. And so this is kind of like, I'll say like this is the next iteration of their plan to try and smuggle drugs into. I mean, just in reading a lot of the articles we were reading, their tunnels are sophisticated. They
had lights in there. Some of them, I think they had heating.
They had lights, heating, and one of them had like a light rail system.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that I'll turn this into a bit of a critique on, American foreign policy just a little bit. But I mean, the fact that they have a tunnel that has heating, lighting, and a light rail system to transport things along this tunnel is quite remarkable. That nobody's so either A, they're very sneaky, or B, somebody's like looking the other direction, which could be a possibility too.
Yeah, and considering the fact that a lot of them actually pop up in industrial areas or through the floor somewhere, mm-hmm. in a place where clearly you have to cooperate with the owner who actually owns that space, because the tunnel's got to end somewhere.
Yeah.
But now with these drones, if you successfully smuggle any sort of narcotic or illegal substance or whatever the case, you don't really have to look at that endpoint as carefully, right? Because that endpoint can change.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Geographically, it can move around. This drone has to be programmed through some sort of signal, and if the situation changes, it can just land somewhere else.
Exactly. I mean, the thing is that these drones are equipped with cameras, and that's kind of the navigation system for the drones. So pretty well, there's somebody who's sitting there with the controller and like a screen, and they're kind of watching where the drone's going. And that's pretty dangerous, because the fact that like you can kind of just like lift this thing up in the air, 20 minutes, get it over the border, and have it land somewhere, and like nobody knows that happened is dangerous almost.
I think you also have to consider the fact that a tunnel is static. Like, that's an investment. You tunneled yourself a piece of infrastructure from point A to B. Now that is not moving around. This is not Harry Potter where stairs can just like keep moving around in circles. This is a tunnel. It's a static thing. A drone is dynamic.
Yep.
It moves around.
Mm-hmm.
It it changes based on what people perceive as an issue in real time.
Exactly.
And it reacts, okay? Now, a drone is smaller, but I guess you can trade something that's smaller for something that's dynamic. Maybe that's worth it overall. Nobody knows. And so we're just literally at the cusp of this. And if you really look at these drones, like the drone that was caught here was a Spreading Wings 900 model, and it's worth about $1,400 US. And it has a fly time of about 18 minutes, according to the manufacturer's website. So anyone realistically can get their hands on this $1,400 drone.
Oh, absolutely.
And as long as this thing is literally just carrying something of value that is worth more
Then the drone.
then the drone is just it's nothing. It's just a carrier. It's not even a human. You catch a drone, whatever. It's just broken parts.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean that almost kind of like takes that takes some ownership out of it. I almost want to say, like, if you like, they're starting to call these drones now blind mules is the new terminology they have for them. And I mean, previously, like, a mule is somebody where like they'll smuggle something in their clothing or like a body orifice or something like that. And if like you catch that person, like now that person is accountable for their actions. You catch a drone and you have like a jamming signal to where they can't trace back the source. Like that's like, you know have a dead lead. That drone is not going to like press a button and it's going to like tell you where it originated from. I mean,
there's going to have to be some extra work now to catch the individual that's programmed that drone.
Exactly. But the comedic element about this one that I really liked was that they could have gotten away with it, and they didn't, because
how so?
Well, they could, because it. I think they said it was carrying. Was it 6 kilos or was it 3 kilos?
So some of these articles are saying 3 kilos. Some are saying 6.
Actually, you know what? This one says 6 pounds. That might be a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so right here. In San Diego, the street value at last count for 6-pound load would have been about $48,000, says the DEA. Okay. Once you get that across the border, that stuff's like gold. So here you have a minimal investment of $1,400 on a drone that's going to return you a net profit of $48,000. And so the reason why I say it's comedic, because they got greedy. Like, we were watching an interview with one of the manufacturers of the drones, and he was kind of saying like, oh yeah, like, you could totally fly with like maybe 4 pounds total. Yeah. But these guys were like, nah, let's just try and push it. Let's get that extra like $20,000 in there, and we'll try and make it worth our money. And the fact that like they did, that's the reason why it crashed. But I almost wonder too if like this is because this one crash landed, this is the first time we're hearing about it. Like, who's to say this hasn't actually been going on for quite some time? Yeah, well, I guess we wouldn't find out. You only find out about these things when people get caught, right? So. The idea here is, please, drug cartel leaders, don't get greedy, okay? Like, you guys are making money anyway. I don't know if that's the message we want to send, but okay. I think that's a good message for everyone overall. Please, just don't get greedy. You pay twice. Okay? Okay, fair point. I guess I'll concede to that, not to be greedy. Now, we should also talk about how... what happens with drones in terms of airspace as well, because we all know that flying over borders just like that without having any sort of documentation, that is definitely illegal. Oh, absolutely. And there are plenty of places in North America and around the world where it is not legal to fly drones. Now, this whole area is very, very gray right now. Drones are a relatively new thing, and in other contexts, it's actually especially comedic when we look at, for example, Washington, D.C. Yeah, so the other story that we found, and then this is going to take me to something else. The other story that we found was that there is a drone that crash landed on the lawn of the White House. When was this? When did this happen? Like recently. This is very recent. I might even say like 2015 recent. 2015, yeah, it is 2015. It's clearly 2015. So, the president and First Lady weren't there at the White House, so the security risk wasn't necessarily aimed at them, but it wasn't even like a security risk. In the end of it, the drone's owner and operator worked for the National Geospace Intelligence Agency, a government entity with mapping and national security duties. So the cool thing is that like, cool, drones are a thing. Cool, they're inexpensive and cheap. And you know what? We can purpose them to do a lot of things for us, like, mapping, and aerial photography. That's the primary use of them, actually. Yeah, aerial photography, and just like kind of enhancing our information pool of stuff, I guess, is how I would describe that. But under normal circumstances, had this owner been operating with his proper license and had like booked, so to say, airtime to fly in this no-fly zone, which is Washington, D.C., nothing would have been wrong. But the fact is that, he wasn't cleared to launch this thing. And in fact, it crash landed on the lawn and created a whole security issue.
The White House was basically locked down until everybody checked out this crash drone, found out that it wasn't a safety concern, and then everything resumed as normal in the White House. Mm-hmm. And so, right, that just raises a whole lot of things right now, because DC in general is a no-fly zone. Mm-hmm. If me and you wanted to fly, I don't even know, like maybe an airplane or something, like a toy model airplane. Yeah, that is just pretty taboo in DC.
Absolutely.
And so these quadcopters are the next step up. They're way more advanced.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the question comes, like, how do you legislate that? Like, if you can walk into, like, Walmart and buy yourself a quadcopter and fly it, and you like, does Walmart now stop stocking quadcopters in no-fly zones? Is that, like, how is it, like, a method of legislating that? Or, like...
Well, weren't they saying that they're trying to actually create radio signals or some sort of signal that'll stop you from flying into a fly zone?
Yeah. So this actually kind of like this ties back to the first story in that I think it's the same interview we were watching with the quadcopter manufacturer, but they're planning on putting radio frequency or like, I don't know how to describe this. They're talking about essentially having built into the drone that it understands where fly lanes are and no-fly zones are, mm-hmm. and that it won't actually operate in those zones, which this might actually come then back to the drug cartel issue where, if they buy a drone off the shelf and they try and fly it, it'll be like, it won't fly because it's in a no-fly zone.
That'd be hilarious. People would be standing at Walmart like, why isn't my drone working? Nonsense. Yeah, so... Anyway, I think we should move on and talk about what that means outside of a North American context.
Well, there's one more thing I want to touch on in North America before we do that.
Okay.
Because, I mean, like, we're talking about drones. Everybody can buy them. A lot of people in our school have actually used them for projects of their own.
Quadcopters, J-grade, yes.
And the fact that they're so accessible is... both interesting and kind of scary at the same time, because not too long ago I was reading and watching some stuff on Amazon's new delivery service where they actually plan on...
This one's great. This one's great, everybody.
Where they actually plan on delivering packages with drones. And right now I think they're in beta testing out in California, where essentially you on your home PC, you're going to sit there at your laptop and you're going to order mugs because your dog broke your mugs and you need new mugs for whatever reason. And so you go on Amazon and you order them and you need them right now because the dog just broke your favorite mug. And
my Pink Floyd mug.
And within, I think their time frame, was like within 2 hours, they'll have the package to you by drone. And watching this video was actually rather terrifying because there was like this kind of there's this guy, he's just like grinning, smiling, and here comes this gigantic black drone flying towards him with this package in tow, and he's happy to receive it. And I find that personally a little weird. Like, I don't know if I want drones showing up to my house with like packages for me,
Personally, I think that would be amazing.
You think you enjoy that?
Yes, I would love it if a drone just went just lands right there, delivers me my goods, and goes away. Like, less people, the better.
Okay. You know what? I could probably see, from a practical perspective, let's talk about practicality here. I could see people that are like bedridden or kind of like people that are on like Meals on Wheels service. I could see that potentially being something very useful for them because they can't leave their home or they're very disabled and they can't go very far. And so they either have like relatives or they have services like Meals on Wheels where they get certain goods delivered to them because they can't get them.
But not even that. What if you're getting goods that they're kind of private goods? You know what I mean? You don't want other people to make that human transaction with you. Well, they're packaged nonetheless, and it's a robot, right? It's non-human contact.
So you're saying that this robot is not going to discriminate or like kind of give you a weird look if you're buying like the Twilight series saga, is what you're trying to get at.
That might be a good thing. Who knows?
So like you're saying if somebody came and delivered you the Twilight series saga in person, you might feel awkward accepting the package from them then.
Well, if I was in my boxers at home just relaxing, I'd have to put on pants if it was a human, but if it's a drone, whatever.
Okay.
It's just more freedom.
Okay.
I don't know, it's just nice.
Okay.
You don't think that a drone would be a good thing?
No, see,
You cut out the middleman, you don't have to pay wage for a drone, right? It's just like you're putting electricity or whatever sort of fuel into it. It costs less than a human. That might lower costs down the line.
you know what? That's a good point.
They're flexible. They don't go to sleep at night. You just set up a drone and say, I need this delivery in 2 hours at 4 a.m. It'll come.
Sure, I can see that. But personally, I'm not one for having a lot of technology invade my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yes, I realize that we are surrounded by technology, and a good chunk of it is stuff that I have collected. But I mean, like, I can turn this off and go to bed. It's not like I don't want a drone hovering outside my room because it's malfunctioned.
But
and
that's your decision to make.
Sure.
You're saying I don't want drone delivery in the middle of the night. That's fine. But some people might want that.
Oh, okay, I guess that's fair.
That's like deleting Facebook, right? You don't want Facebook, you delete it. What's the problem?
I guess so. I mean, I just personally, like, I see a few outcomes if Amazon decides to start fully implementing this. I mean, one, they did talk about the legality of this in, like, going back into our airspace conversation. Like, how do you regulate where a drone can fly? Is a drone an airplane? If a drone is now in the airstream of, like, if it's on a flight path, is it going to potentially have some negative effect on the airplanes that are flying that route?
Yes, it might, because if you think about airports, for example, they often worry about birds that might get stuck in engines or whatever, and that they even have some sort of birds of prey that hunt or go after or scare these birds away so that they don't get in the way of airplanes.
Yeah.
And so now if you have all these drones, right, and there's a whole multitude of them, imagine like one day, imagine if drones are as common as birds, just these little quadcopters flying everywhere. There would definitely have to be some sort of system to keep them in line. They just can't fly and make their own decisions like a bird. You know what I mean?
That's fair to say. So, I mean, one issue in having drones become kind of commonplace is, restricting flight paths, how these things are supposed to fly. The other thing I see is like people with a baseball bat on your lawn waiting for this drone to come in because this is how they get their kicks for the day. And they see that like, oh, I'm going to get this drone, bah, and they just crack this drone and like, I could see that happening for a little bit, and then I think that would just kind of slowly like die off. But
there just has to be some good legislation put in place to make sure you don't break other people's drones, right? It's like you can get a pizza man also robbed at the door. Am I right?
That's true.
There's
actually
some damage being done there, and I've heard many stories of this back when I worked at Pizza Nova. But true story. But now if you have a drone that's not a human, it's still susceptible to the same sort of, nonsense that happens at the door when a delivery is made.
Okay, that's fair to say.
It's just that a drone would be in pieces. Well, you can still end up in pieces as a pizza delivery man, but I mean, the drone would really have a hard time recovering. You just have to have another drone ready. And what do you do? Like, I think they would have to get a lot cheaper. Like $1,400, that's amazing, but it only gets like 18 minutes of flight time.
Sure.
It only carries like 6 pounds. Like these, I don't know, Amazon drones would have to be amazing. Their flight time would have to be
like
really hours, right?
Yeah.
It would have to be like almost airplane sort of quality, this thing. And it would have to be strong too.
Sure.
There would have to be insurance on these drones. Like there would be a whole sort of law system based on these Amazon drones.
Or not even just Amazon drones. Like, I mean, sure, Amazon's the first to pioneer them, but like, who's to say that other companies like, grocery stores, wouldn't that be something interesting if like you sit at home and like you on your like tablet and you're like, I want some avocados and I want some grapefruit and I want a pineapple, and you order it and like, there's a drone that comes by and brings your fruit and vegetables to you. Like, that could potentially be a thing.
Yeah. Drones, they would have to know where the front door is, though. They would have to be really, really intelligent.
That's the other thing.
And intuitive. I know when I was a pizza delivery man, I had a very hard time finding the door in a lot of places. In backyards, when people hang out there, you don't know where to go.
That's true. I think
in the middle of the night, especially, I'm telling you, like 2 a.m., you really have a hard time finding these places in some of these mansion neighborhoods. Now, this drone would have to intuitively know where the humans are.
Yeah. Well, I think it's even funnier too, because you did tell me a story of like you had to like deliver pizza to somebody's garage or something like that.
Yes.
Like, you know.
Oh, that's another situation. Like humans are able to make sure that there's a human interaction that goes into play when a delivery is made. Certain things are kept hush-hush when you're a human. Now, when you're a robot and you're delivering that, I don't know how a robot would negotiate with a human when there's certain things that shouldn't be happening in that garage.
Personally, I don't think that the drone is going to negotiate with you.
It's not. It's like a vending machine. You can't argue. It's like $1.25 and that's it.
Well, I mean,
it's not $1.10. It's not $1. It's $1.25.
Well, the whole point of this service was that you pay by credit card, and it's not the machine's not the drone's not going to come.
I'm just saying that a financial thing is the least of the drone's concerns when it arrives at the door. You never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
In a delivery situation.
Absolutely. But I actually have to also ask you another question. If drones if they become very commonplace, multiple people use them, do you think there will be like multiple operators, or are these drones going to be pretty self-sufficient then? And if they are self-sufficient, are they prone to malfunction? And if they malfunction, what if they attack you?
I don't think they're going to attack anybody. But they already have almost completely autonomous drones, right? In the Israeli aerospace industries has a drone that carries about, I think it was like 250 kilograms of payload, and it's pretty much autonomous. It even parks itself, puts itself in the hangar, and it's done. You just say, okay, go drone, and it'll circle around areas, do whatever you want it to do, and come back. Mm-hmm. And so that's already being put into place, but that's a multi-million-dollar industry.
Absolutely.
That's been going on for a while now. And these drones, this is a whole different topic. This is not for necessarily like aerial surveillance or military purposes. This is just for human delivery use per se in this context, right?
Okay.
So I think that one day they will have to be autonomous. They will have to run and make decisions because, like I said before, the world right now is super dynamic. The same way that the cartel leaders are maybe opting for drones because they're dynamic and they can go from point A to B to point Z if they have to. This drone also needs to be dynamic.
Sure.
And part of being dynamic is making decisions on its own, you know? Especially now that, for example, the people that are operating these things want less liability, they want less responsibility for this drone when it goes out. Imagine if you have, thousands of orders to ship out and they all come in at around a similar time. You can't be fully watching what every single drone is doing. You have a whole fleet of drones making its own decision.
Oh, okay, but like, do you not find something scary in having like a drone make its own decision for itself? Like, what if all of a sudden the drone's flying through and somehow there's like some interference that modifies the plan that's now on the drone, and it just decides to like run into the side of a building like a big bird? Like, do you not think that would be an issue if all of a sudden these are all very like self-automated? I mean, like to go back to the Israeli aerospace program that we were talking about, while they are very self-sufficient, by law they have to have somebody who sits in the booth 24/7 on shifts to maintain these drones.
Yeah, but what they're doing is they're looking after one very expensive drone.
Well, multiple drones. I remember saying that they could have multiple drones in the air.
Multiple drones, but I mean not thousands, like maybe a handful of drones in the sky at the same time. And you have one person looking at multiple screens and making sure everything's going okay. But each one of these is super, super expensive. Like, I think the idea there is that when you have one, some sort of good that is super expensive and that you have a lot of responsibility for it, then obviously you're worried about it. But if you have thousands of them and they become, maybe like $1,400 in the future, then you don't look at it the same way. You know what I mean? You polish that Bugatti because it's a Bugatti. You don't do that to a Honda Civic. So if we have a bunch of flying Honda Civics, you look at that situation differently.
I think you might have offended some people that really polish their Honda Civics, the ones that have the drop kits and the exhaust kits on those.
I'm sorry, everybody.
But no,
sorry.
I mean,
get a Toyota Yaris.
I mean, I can see your point there. In like, if there's thousands of them, you lose one, it doesn't make a difference. But I mean, I'm talking like, if they're autonomous, like the credibility, responsibility, accountability, like all those things that you'd have with a human delivery person. Like I was watching a story the other day, because this is something that is apparently a thing now, that people are now having to put security cameras near their doors because UPS deliveries and other people like that just destroy their packages. I remember I was watching a video here where some delivery guy literally like just walked over, threw this package over the fence, and like peed on the other side of the fence and like left.
Oh boy.
And you know, there's this like the owner had it on film and like called UPS and said the driver, first of all, destroyed my package. Secondly, he peed on my property, and you know, UPS is now accountable for the driver, and he was fired. If you have a drone that malfunctions and decides to like terrorize your dog, and you know, something like that, like how is the drone accountable?
A human malfunctions in this case, am I right?
Sure.
And made this sort of decision. A drone could just as easily malfunction. Who takes the responsibility? The corporation, whoever's running these delivery men or the delivery drones, right? The problem is when you have a drone, I guess, delivering what you want is, again, it's a machine. Like, you can't negotiate with a machine, especially if you don't have experience with it. You know what I mean? Like this.
So you're saying if you had experience, you could negotiate with the drone if it decided to show
Well,
up?
if your computer malfunctions, you know what to do.
Sure.
And you might have an idea of what to do.
Okay.
If you can't close a program, you untask it. Am I right? That's something you've learned over time.
Okay, fair.
Because you've had experience with that machine. Now, if you're a person at a door, right?
Yep.
And you have this drone coming at you with goods that you've ordered.
Yep.
You have to know how to negotiate with that machine if it malfunctions. But if this is a relatively new thing, you don't know how to do that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It has to be common knowledge. The same way that Apple, for example, has simplified a whole technology industry based on smartphones and things like that. We've come to learn how to use smartphones. You know,
Sure.
If you just toss somebody a smartphone in 1992, like our generation, they would not know intuitively that there's one button and that's the home screen. They don't know that. That takes time. So if this thing malfunctions and goes on, then people are eventually going to get used to it, I think. They're just going to know what to do. These drones are going to get better.
Yeah, you know, I guess I can see your point. I mean, like to go back to your point about the technology, like cell phones are now a commonplace thing. You know, I guess there is a valid point in saying that drones too could become something pretty commonplace.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks. Case closed.
So, I guess look outside your window because there may be a drone there right this second. No, that's not going to be for like at least another 5-10 years or so.
Well, you never know, man. You never know. Things go on pretty quickly in this world.
That's true. I'd still be very weary of having a drone fly around my house, but that's just.
It's
me.
just really funny coming from you, though. Just really, really hilarious. Like, I'd feel like you'd be the first person on board ordering something on Amazon, and just something weird like, I don't know, new speakers or whatever. It's like, I got this drone and it delivered speakers to me from Atlanta, Georgia. Got here in 2 hours. I'd be like, what? Yeah.
I think I see myself as the one in the tinfoil hat in my basement, not wanting a drone to show up to my house. I mean, you can already look at my house on Google Street View. I don't want a live feed of me, you know, eating pizza, my boxers opening the door, accepting my package.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Then why do you publish that all over the interwebs?
What are you talking about?
Anywho, let's move on to the doctor-assisted death.
Yeah, this one's really interesting and mildly controversial, and we have facts to back up everything that we would probably be talking about here. Yeah.
Yeah, you say it so unconfidently. We do. Okay.
Well,
so,
like, is anything ever for certain in this world?
No. You're
Okay.
right. Okay. But now we're just extra cautious because people have called us out on it.
No. Like, I mean, to be very fair in what they said, like, you know, some comments that we received after doing the first podcast was that, you know, we should be a little bit more researched and we should actually, like, have some legitimate facts that we're pulling from. And last time we did, we had articles, but I guess we could be a little bit more specific in what we're talking about.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, these will all be posted
Yeah, exactly.
under the video on YouTube, so you guys can go ahead and check our numbers and check the date if you want.
Well, not even so much. You don't have to fact check this, but the thing is that, like, we want to. The whole idea of this podcast is to have a conversation with people, kind of continue the conversation. And so if you want to, A, you know, join in on the conversation, or B, you want to be a little bit more well versed in what we're talking about, or you want to find out a little bit more about the subjects we talked about, we're going to put the links to the articles and the videos and stuff that we watched in the description box. So that will kind of be an ongoing thing that we'll do.
Yes. Okay, so anyway, enough with that banter. Doctor-assisted death. So what exactly happened? Who approved, or who started to get the ball rolling on this doctor-assisted death thing?
Well, I'm going to be honest in saying I don't know very much about the history of this. I just remember when I saw the headline for this that the Supreme Court of Canada had ruled that doctor-assisted death would be something that would now be legalized. I believe previously it wasn't, and I think that was an old, going back to like grade 12 law here, I think that was an old British statute that they've kept. I could be very wrong in saying that. But recently, the Supreme Court of Canada has declared that the doctors can now, I don't know how to say this, doctors can now relieve somebody of their pain and suffering and
terminate their life.
Terminate their life, basically.
As long as they're of sound mind. That is what they said.
Yeah.
And that is a very gray zone, because how do you define sound mind, and what does that mean for people that have Alzheimer's, for example? These people have conditions or diseases or even mental issues or whatever that are unyielding. These things will not end. And that is why they are starting to consider this to be good, actually, overall, for these people that could potentially want to terminate their life, because they're just suffering, and they want to stop that suffering. But it's really hard to kind of define like what is actually suffering. Like how do you define something as unyielding? Like, is depression unyielding? Like, do we know that, like, if people take something for depression and it kind of subsides a little bit, does that make them eligible, I guess, not to terminate their life now? Or like, what does that really mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's part of what's being talked about now. I mean, the Supreme Court ruled that doctors can now allow people to do this, or that doctors now are given the rights to, terminate somebody's life if they're grievously ill and such. But right now, what's being worked out is the legislation for all that, because you're right, it is a very gray zone. You can going back to what you said, can you claim that depression is an actual thing that really mentally plagues you, and you no longer have quality of life, so to say? And who does that apply to? Like, if you are 20 years old and you're suffering from depression or some sort of mental illness, does that now qualify you to approach your doctor about that?
That's another thing that was actually mentioned in this article here, that Quebec wants to have its own bill, and it's called Bill 52, that has its own sort of rules as to what goes on with doctor-assisted death. The rest of Canada, I believe, would be covered under the Supreme Court decision. And so basically, from what I understand, the rest of Canada requires that you be near end of life to actually be eligible.
Right.
Or no, sorry. The Quebec bill, Bill 52, is the one that requires you to be near end of life. And I'm pretty sure the Canadian one does not require that. Okay. Which goes back to what you said. So if you're relatively young and you have some sort of issue, you can basically, you may potentially in the future be able to say that, I want to terminate my life. But in Quebec, that would not be the case.
Yeah. But I mean, this does raise a lot of ethical questions. One of them that was rolling around in my head is that, now doctors are allowed to terminate somebody's life. How does that ethically play on the role of the doctor? I mean, you can obviously have sympathy probably for somebody who's suffering, and, there's no longer that quality of life for them. It's one thing if, you're getting old in life and you're slowing down and you're not 100% there, but, you still have a quality of life and your family and friends are around you, and, there is that, I keep going back to that quality of life. But, if you get to a point where you're, so physically disabled or you're mentally disabled that you can't enjoy life anymore and just every day is a hardship, that there's now an option for you to do that. But as a doctor, I mean, I don't know how, like if I was a doctor, I don't know how I'd feel with the responsibility and kind of the trust to make that call after somebody, kind of gives me permission to terminate somebody's life.
Exactly. Like assuming the fact that doctors are pretty much trained to try to save people. That's essentially their goal.
Well, that's what they take in the Hippocratic Oath when
exactly. And so now this sort of decision here could pretty much spin their whole world around. Now they're not saving anymore necessarily. They're just agreeing to the fact, yeah, okay, nothing can be done because you would like it to be this way, so okay. And which is strange, because if you look at some other countries like Cuba that send a lot of doctors to fight Ebola in West Africa,
like Doctors Without Borders.
Exactly. Like these people are doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're trying to save people, and now, I guess you could say these people are also doing it out of the goodness of their heart, but it's a very different goal now, and it's not about necessarily saving in terms of physically being alive. It might be saving them from suffering, saving them from just being depressed or whatever. Those sorts of things. Like it's not about life now that is necessarily being saved. It's their idea of life that would be, I guess, not saved, but it would be stopped.
Well, I mean, like, I guess that also goes into raise other questions too. Excuse me. Like, maybe you could qualify ending your life if you're in that much pain and suffering as being saved, and like where that falls, and also too, like, I don't know how I'd feel consenting to that to another family member. Like, I'd want to do everything I could to save that family member and have the doctor do everything in their power to do so, and to kind of say just oh, I guess they're in so much suffering that they shouldn't suffer anymore. Like that'd be something very hard to wrestle with, I think.
Well, also another thing you have to consider is that if this does happen, it's not going to be instant. You have to have formal written consent basically that you want this to happen, and there's a period of time that has to go on. I think it's months actually before somebody actually gets terminated. And so that's very interesting, because earlier we were wondering how fast would this process actually take place. Like, would a doctor, if God forbid they mess up or whatever, would they be able to cover their tracks? Well, I guess not really if it's a month-long process. So that's another interesting thing to think. And also religious factions. What do religious people think about something like this?
Sure.
I guess they would be opposed completely, but what sort of happens, not just in sort of a medical consequence, like you're mentioning family life, you're mentioning like all these other things.
Sure.
Religion, like what does that mean if you go to work or whatever and you tell people, like how do people plan for that? Imagine you have that date written down where you're like, okay, my life is ending today, and how do other people prepare for that? How does society prepare for that? It's not, it doesn't just affect you now. When somebody dies, usually it's more of an unexpected thing, I would think, right?
Absolutely.
And so that kind of catches people off guard, and they sort of reshuffle and do some things, and they manage to change pretty quickly what their plans are and what they're about to do because of a certain event like that. But if this is already planned beforehand, what do people do?
Well, I mean, like, I think to also bring this, like, I think this is a very similar thing to people that know they have terminal cancer. Like, that there's chemo's not going to work. There's no other treatments you can take to rid yourself of the cancer that you have. So I think, like, this might be similar to those families that experience that particular scenario where they have terminal cancer and they're going to die, and that the family then prepares to accept that. I think you might see something similar if this is the case in doing so. But like the other question that's rolling around in my head, because I voiced the first opinion of like, saddling medical practitioners with the responsibility of terminating somebody's life is a very heavy thing. You know,
Yeah.
like people go to jail and in other countries are executed for killing other people. Now you're going to kind of give that responsibility and that power to doctors to tell them, like, you know, if somebody comes and expresses to you that they wish to no longer live, then, you know, it is within your power to terminate their life. Like, that's just a heavy, heavy thing to be saddled with.
Yeah.
And then, so the other thing I have is that, okay, call that part A. Part B is like, you know, Quebec has specified that this is going to pertain more to people that are at end of life. What about other parts of Canada where, you know, somebody who's 20 years old, somebody who's 15 years old, somebody who's 6 years old, who's riddled with either like a, you know, physical disability or a mental disability that, you know, they're essentially qualified to have their life terminated. Like, to then saddle a doctor with, you know, terminating somebody's life who's that young, like that, just I don't know how that sits with me.
Yeah.
I mean I can sympathize if, you know, with the people who are in tremendous suffering and pain. I'm just thinking more from the perspective of a doctor, to now put that in your workflow, you know.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna change some things, but all of these things right now are pretty much restructuring the way that the world works, I think, and there's gonna have to be a lot. We just need some time, really. I think we really need time to understand what all the implications are. If you look at all of these articles here, they're mentioning like what checks and balances should be put in place, basically,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of room for abuse, and that doesn't just pertain to, for example, termination of life. That same with the drones we were mentioning before. Like, there have to be checks and balances, and
Absolutely.
and these things are going to take time, and so I think we'll have to just wait on this one and find out what's going to happen in the future. We probably don't even understand what the benefits and all of the disadvantages of this are.
Absolutely. I think that's why they're taking, I think they said they're taking about a year to work out the legislation on all this, to figure out like how to legislate this and how to put rules in place that, you know, there's certain codes of ethics that are followed in performing this.
Mm-hmm. And we were just wondering, does anyone in the studio audience want to voice what they think about any of these topics we've discussed today?
Drones or... Well, hold on. Let's get a microphone to him. Just take it out of the clip. Just pop it out of the clip. Okay. Pass around behind your head. Whoop. Okay, hang on a second.
Okay, so I'm going to just mention some things. While we're passing the mic around, this is going to be a weekly sort of thing where whoever's sitting in the audience can basically just chat up and tell us what they think. So come on down.
Have you tested this? So
Yes, it's fine.
So you just got to kind of talk directly into it. It's a directional microphone.
I can do that. So I haven't read in as much into this issue as maybe you guys have, but I do listen to a lot. My girlfriend actually studies bioethics at the University of Toronto, and so I hear about this all the time. But there are, and I just want to put this out there, and I just want to suggest this. But like, there are places where doctor-assisted suicide does exist, and has for a relatively short amount of time. In the grand scope of things, and places like I believe like Belgium, and Washington
State.
Washington State.
Okay.
Could be that. Anyways, it's one like West Coast American state.
Okay.
And so like it does exist.
Sure.
In certain places, and I think that you can when you're going about setting up this kind of stuff, you can look at where it has been used. Well, not used, but like implemented and tried out.
Yep.
Already to kind of influence how you approach it in your own
in the Canadian
province.
context.
Yeah, or how we approach it.
Yeah.
and I think that's a really valuable kind of resource, and because it's a problem that's been talked about for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And like it's not a new problem, and so there's a lot of resources that, and ideas that you can base whatever legislation you make on that. And, but it's certainly still a work in progress.
Yeah.
Yep. So anybody, you want to comment on drones, or does anybody else want to chime in on doctor-assisted death or drones, or more than welcome to?
I do have a point to make on drones.
Sure.
I think that to me that's a really strange idea, but at the same time, it's the great grounds for a new movie. So you guys should write that down.
Okay.
But being attacked by drones.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could sell it like Attack of the Drones to Metro-Goldwyn Mayer, and make a lot of money. Personally,
unfortunately, it's already been done. If you're a Shia LaBeouf fan, which there aren't very many out there, but if you're a Shia LaBeouf fan, there's a movie called Eagle Eye, which came out in like.
Oh yeah,
yes,
I've seen
yes,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, does that have drones in it?
Yeah, that's. I mean, yeah, that
No,
one
because
has drones.
it has that centralized kind of
computer.
Kind of computer
well, there's a
thing.
centralized computer, but like it extends into using drones to attack them. Like they're driving
Does
in,
it?
in the tunnel, and there's like this like predator drone that's in the sky.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that came out what, like 4 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
3 years ago?
Yeah.
Shia LaBeouf fans. Well, yeah, I guess you're a little too late in that regard.
That's okay.
Anyways, that's all I have to say. Matt, do you want to chime in on? No.
Next time, Matt.
Next time? Okay.
Yeah. We got to wrap up the show anyway.
Yeah, you
so.
should.
Well, wait, anybody else want to say anything? Zach, Kobe?
I'm good.
Good. Okay. Well,
No jokes?
Oh, no.
Oh.
okay.
Okay, Mackenzie. Well, you can wrap up the show if you'd like, because you already got the mic.
Okay. Well, I mean, like he can say his final words, but we've got some stuff to tell people about like coming days and whatnot.
Oh yeah, that's true. Sorry, Mac.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry to remove the privilege of having you end the show this time. We promise we'll build it into our next set. I don't mean to be facetious. Anyway, no, so we plan on doing this next week as well, too?
Yeah, of course.
So we're going to be doing this again next week in the Bridge Space from 5 to 6 every Wednesday. Additionally, too, this is podcasted out on the YouTube page for Bridge. So you can either, in YouTube, just search BRIDGECAST, and like we're like second on the page or something like that. Apparently there's something about casting bridges in a movie that is before us, which I have yet to watch and understand quite what that is. But for now, we're at second on the page.
We're working on the cease and desist.
Yes. No, so every Wednesday, 5 to 6, you can catch us here in the Bridge Space. This is also podcasted every Thursday, so I'll be editing this tonight and should be up on the Bridge website tomorrow. So it'll be on the YouTube page, it'll be on the Bridge page, and we kind of want everybody to come out, join in on the conversation. That's the whole reason why we have microphones floating in the audience. You know, if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, that's cool. That's the whole art of conversation. And we'd like to hear other people's opinions. And as we were talking with the guys from On Empathy earlier, there's pockets of people that have these conversations anyways. So, you know, why not voice your opinions and your thoughts on these things in a form of, you know, students where we can treat these topics as academically as we'd like to, or, you know, we can talk about bad Shia LaBeouf movies if we really want to. Like the format and kind of content of all this is really up to us to decide what we want to do with it.
Yeah, more on those movies next week.
Yeah, more of those movies updates. We'll bring you Shia LaBeouf movie updates. Next week we're talking Transformers and how bad some of them were. No,
Some of them?
some of them. So
Last thing, I really, really, really appreciate, and I think Brandon does as well, all of the criticism. All of the people that voiced their concerns about maybe something that we should improve on, something that should change the following week. That's all great. We also would really like to thank all the people in studio that just kind of listen to us on the side
Absolutely.
while they're working. That's great. So keep it up, everyone.
And another thing I actually want to thank too, I was just thinking about this, I told you earlier this week too, I want to talk about it, but I'm incredibly thankful that we have this platform, not only through the school. I mean, it's one thing to have, it's one thing to have this platform through the school, and we're incredibly thankful for that we kind of have this open forum where we can talk about whatever we wish to talk about, but kind of taking this out of, like, a little larger scale to, like, Canada and North America, that we have this freedom to critique and express interests or argue on politics, world news, movies, and other topics, that we have that freedom to do that. And I was reflecting on that the other day, because there's a lot of people that don't have that freedom and that are persecuted in other countries for having an opinion that's not the same as the masses. So I really wanted to kind of or I really want to express how thankful I am that we both have a platform to do this out of, but that we also have, the freedom of speech to do that with.
Yeah, and everyone else does too, which, I mean, in Canada. Yeah. So everyone just come on down.
So
It's not just here.
Yeah. This conversation everywhere.
Alrighty.
So I think we'll call that one a wrap for the day. So catch us next week, 5 to 6. And, sorry, one more thing. I keep trying to end this, and there's more things that keep coming in my head. We will, every Monday, make a post about the topics we plan on covering. So earlier this week, there's a Facebook post made by our social director. She posted in the Facebook group and said that, hey guys, come out to 60 Main, 5 to 6 to listen to the BRIDGECAST. They're going to be covering doctor-assisted death, on empathy, and drones. And if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, then come on out. So we're going to try and continue that as well too. So if you are interested in coming out and you want to do a little bit of research before coming out to kind of contribute more to the conversation, in case that's something you're not very well versed in, then by all means, we'd love that. We'd love to have some, people to bounce ideas off or get some feedback from people. So every Monday, our topics should be posted, and you guys can kind of chime in, and if you agree with what we're going to talk about, or if there's something you think we should talk about, you can comment on that post and suggest something, and maybe link us an article or something like that. What do you think of that?
I think that's great, everybody.
Yeah.
That's great.
Slow clap. So anyway, I'm Brandon.
I'm Thomas.
And this has been BRIDGECAST. We'll see you guys next week.
All right.